From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. The voters have spoken in Tennessee's August elections. Today on Inside Politics, we'll take a look at what they said and what it means, at least in a couple of areas. Later in the show, we'll do that with Tom Humphrey about the Tennessee General Assembly. We'll also talk with Supreme Court Justice Connie Clark about the successful effort that she and two other Tennessee High Court justices had in winning retention elections on Thursday. But first, we welcome News Channel 5's investigative reporter Phil Williams to the program to further discuss that retention removal election, which was certainly, Phil, the most expensive and contentious contest on the ballot in August. Thanks for joining us again.
Absolutely.
Now, the justices all won 8-year terms on the bench. Usually retention races are like watching paint dry. They're very boring, and there's really no controversy to it at all. But this time there was actually a major organized effort by Lieutenant Governor Ron Ramsey and others to oust these judges. I don't think I've ever seen a race quite like this in Tennessee.
No, there has never been a race like this. In 1996, you had a very small effort to go after one justice who was on the ballot, Penny White, and the Republicans and some of the victims' rights groups successfully knocked her off. But go after 3 sitting justices, and essentially the goal was to take control of the Tennessee Supreme Court. Now,
what was the fact that Lieutenant Governor Ramsey swung and missed at this? At least he was leading the effort. How big a defeat, how big a political shiner is this for him?
Well, I think he really thought that he could pull this off. I never had the political conversation with him, but certainly it is not an accomplishment that he can boast about on his political resume.
Now, you led and sparked the coverage of this retention effort across the state. You're an investigative reporter. You do some political things, but usually this is not the kind of story, at least on the front end, I would think you'd be bird dogging, looking around. How did you get interested in this?
Well, I learned early on about Lieutenant Governor Ramsey's plan, and I realized, number one, this was going to be an unprecedented campaign. Tennessee had never seen anything like this. I also heard that Lieutenant Governor Ramsey was trying to get $1 million plus. A lot of it from big corporations, a lot of it out-of-state money. So we really kind of made a commitment that we were going to follow the money.
He got the money, but it didn't turn out to be the money, or at least from where he wanted it to come. He wound up having to put a lot more money in this than he thought he was going to have to himself.
Right. He put more than $400,000 out of his own political action committee. Now, we don't quite know yet was he counting on various interests to basically make contributions to his committee, and then he could dole those out. We really don't have that picture yet.
But he's got some explaining to do. He told his donors to his PAC that he was not going to use that PAC, but he did.
He told reporters that. And then the other thing that really was interesting for me as an investigative reporter was that when we got a copy of Ramsey's plan of attack, essentially, there were a number of things in there that were misleading or untrue. And so we really just sort of made a commitment that we were going to defend the truth. We were going to watch what both sides said and call out anything that was untrue or misleading. And so, there ended up being more of those statements from the opposition, but we also called out the justices for claiming in a campaign ad that they had defended the Second Amendment when there had been no actual Second Amendment cases that they had heard and ruled upon.
The focus in a lot of the TV ads, and there were about $1 million worth of TV ads done, I think, from both sides, went after trying to make those justices be the most liberal, this most liberal place in Tennessee was the Supreme Court, and to go after them for being soft on crime, and also for being in favor of advancing Obamacare, even though that's a federal issue. That sounds like something from their research that would have worked. Why didn't it?
It is something that their research indicated that would work. From my perspective, perhaps they swung for the fences a little too much on that issue, because they did have an issue that two of these three justices had appointed an attorney general who later refused, several years later refused to file suit over Obamacare.
And control of the attorney general's position is really one of the key factors in all this. Not just taking over the court, but taking over that position, which would complete Republican domination of all of state government.
That's right. But the problem they had was that argument is not easily digestible in a 30-second commercial. So they had to, or they went with the, quote, advanced Obamacare, which is a different argument than they appointed an attorney general who later refused to
Gets too
file
complicated.
suit. That's right. So advancing Obamacare is an active statement, and there was really no evidence that they had, quote, advanced Obamacare.
This effort to take over Supreme Courts or change them from being what some people consider to be liberal to being more conservative is not something going on just in Tennessee. It's been going on all over the country with some success in states like Iowa.
That's right. I mean, there have been successes. There have also been failures. One of the out-of-state groups that put in at least 200,000, they've said by the time it was over, they might have put in 400,000, was the Republican State Leadership Committee. They waged a similar campaign to take out a justice in North Carolina and failed in that campaign. So, but yes, this is going on across the country, and frankly, I think we'll see it again in Tennessee.
This is not the last statewide matter regarding the judiciary that voters are going to vote on. There's a constitutional amendment coming up in November that would put language into the document that will have these retention elections every 8 years again. It also will allow both houses of the legislature to actually confirm appointments by the governor to the Supreme Court, giving the legislature basically a veto over Supreme Court appointments in the future. Are we going to have more controversy ahead?
That one is going to be fascinating to watch, because that amendment, if you look at it within the perspective of this race, that amendment essentially gives Lieutenant Governor Ryan Ramsey, who was the big loser, I think, in this race, gives him and his Senate veto power over judicial appointments.
So he lost in August, but he might still win at least something in November.
Exactly. And this is a long game, because what happens if a Democrat is elected governor and gets to appoint Supreme Court justices? I think the voters will have to decide, do they want Ryan Ramsey in the Senate and Beth Harwell in the House to have veto power? So that's going to be fascinating.
So has our judicial system changed forever, for good or bad?
I don't think our system will ever be the same.
Phil Williams, thank you for joining us. Thank you for your coverage on that, and we'll have you back again in the
Thanks
future.
so much.
We'll take a break right now, come back and talk with one of those that was deeply involved in the attention replacement race. That's Connie Clark, State Supreme Court Justice. Back to talk with her after this message.